Welcome everyone to our Tech Talk. We're going to talk today about how Inventa delivers operational analytics to their suppliers with the help of Hex and dbt's Semantic Layer. So let's get started. I'm super excited to walk through the problem that we're solving today. A couple of housekeeping notes before we actually get started. Please drop any questions in the Q&A box, and we'll also send the recording after the session, so don't worry about that. Let's actually meet the folks who we're going to be talking to today. Daniel will be providing us an introduction of Inventa and the supplier analytics problem that they faced. Cameron will give us an overview of dbt and the semantic layer. I, Ariel, will provide a Hex overview, and Gabriel will walk through how Inventa solved their supplier analytics problem and actually dive into a live demo. So with that, I will hand it over to Daniel.
Thanks, Ariel. It's great to be here today to tell you all a little bit about Inventa and how we solved some of our problems with Hex and dbt. Inventa is a wholesale marketplace that connects brands with independent retailers across Brazil. We serve tens of thousands of retailers and thousands of brands today, and our mission is to empower these small businesses today across Brazil and in the future across all of Latin America, and build an ecosystem for small businesses across the continent. Our company was founded in 2021 in Sao Paulo, and since then we've grown our team to over 200 people, and we're still hiring. Our product looks a lot like a typical e-commerce site that you're used to seeing and using. The main differences are that you have to buy in bulk because we're a wholesale marketplace, and of course if you're not from Brazil or Portugal, you might struggle with the Portuguese. Otherwise, the product should be pretty familiar to you. At a high level, our business model is pretty straightforward as well. Inventa connects sellers to buyers, and we earn a take rate on each transaction that takes place on the marketplace. However, there's a lot of complexity under the hood to make that experience simple for our suppliers and retailers. And fortunately for us as a data team, we actually sit at the center a lot of a lot of that value creation. So on the retailer side, our data scientists work on risk, so we extend credit to retailers. We also have to try and catch people who might be trying to defraud us. This is a much bigger problem for us in Brazil than it would be, for example, in the United States. We work on search, helping retailers discover brands and products, and also on recommendations so that we can personalize the experience. We also have to predict shipping times and shipping costs. Moving goods about the country, again, is one of those things that's harder in Brazil than it is in the US, and so data science and machine learning play a key role in helping us do that well. And at some point, we'll have some interesting OR problems in terms of optimizing our inventory levels, figuring out which warehouses to stock which products in. There's interesting operational implications and tax implications from that as well. On the supplier side, we have part of the business that focuses on distribution. We have to determine the best suppliers to bring onto the marketplace and try and predict the impact that they'll have when we do. As Gabriel will talk about, providing analytics to suppliers so that they can better run their businesses both on and off Inventa is something that we're very focused on as well. And at some point in the future, we'll begin to offer financing and fulfillment service to these suppliers. And then in the middle, in terms of serving Inventa as a whole, we have to manage our data platform. Of course, we do all of our data modeling in dbt to support myriad data functions across the company. We own product analytics, and at the end of that, A/B testing and experimentation. So to touch again on the supplier analytics theme that Gabrielle will be walking us through at the end here, we had something in place at the beginning. Inventa is still a young company. We're less than 2 years old, and so while we have solutions to a lot of problems, they tend to be solutions that were put together quite quickly and aren't necessarily the best version of things. There's a lot of MVPs that still need to be worked on. Supplier analytics was no exception. We had a report that involved somebody extracting a CSV from a Hex dashboard, importing the results locally and running some Python code to turn all of these results into different PDFs that we could then send to suppliers. The code was not particularly efficient. It was on someone's local machine. It wasn't in a repo. It was quite buggy and had to be run in chunks. Once those PDFs were developed, they were put into a Google Drive. Another Python script was run to upload each PDF into different Google Drive folders for each supplier, and then generate links, which were then uploaded into our email tool and finally sent out to suppliers. So a lot of problems in that process, very manual, error-prone, not particularly scalable. And so the business team that had built this process came to us and said, hey, Data, can you guys help us automate this a little more? And so we took a look at the problem and realized that not only could we speed it up a little bit and automate it and scale it, that we could actually rebuild it from the ground up with some of the tools that we had recently started using ourselves. So instead of automating the existing process, we took that opportunity and we used Hex and we used DBT and we built something completely new. We'd been Hex users for a while. We'd very recently started using the Semantic Layer in DBT, and we realized that we could basically take the metrics that we were sending to suppliers straight out of the metrics layer that we were using to power our business analytics. So we could reuse something we already had, and we knew that if we ever made changes to those metrics, we would update them in a single place, and suppliers and Inventa would be looking at exactly the same thing. And with Hex and our ability to build public-facing web apps, we could do away with the Python code and the PDFs and the Google Drive folders and all of that manual work, and instead build dashboards that we could automatically send to suppliers that look nice, certainly a lot better than the PDFs we had before, that were performant. We didn't have to worry about scalability issues. So through that combination of DBT and Hex, we were able to not only rebuild this and make it significantly better, but we were able to do it in a few weeks instead of a few months, and without any dependency on engineering, design, or product. So win-win all around. So now I'll turn it over to Cameron to talk about DBT.
Hey everyone, I'm going to provide an overview of DBT and talk about some of the functionality that Hex and Inventa are connecting with. DBT provides a toolkit for you to develop, test, and deploy data products in your warehouse. So essentially you're able to take raw data and transform it, get it ready for analysis in tools like Hex and for other analysis use cases. DBT solves a workflow problem, whereas before engineers might be bottlenecks, there might be non-repeatable processes, some of the issues that Daniel was talking about, and no version control or governance. With DBT, analytics can be more collaborative, the modularity increases the speed and the time to value, and testing, lineage, and access control reduce the risk. So DBT allows data teams to standardize the production of their data sets. DBT adoption is growing really quickly. So over 16,000 organizations use DBT. There are over 3,000 customers of DBT Cloud and thousands of trained analytics engineers and DBT community members. DBT is also building in new directions. So we recognized among a lot of our customers, they're having challenges with their metrics. They might ask a question like, what was revenue in June? And have that revenue metric defined in a number of different tables, queries, and analytics tools. DBT saw an opportunity to build upon the data transformation that folks are already doing in their DBT projects. So they can define a revenue metric, let's say, on top of their existing modeling and access that metric's definition and query its data within a tool like Hex. That means that when anyone in an organization is asking a question like, what was revenue in June? It doesn't matter what tool they're using or who's asking the question. They have a standardized metric that returns the same consistent and precise data. DBT Cloud Metadata API and the Semantic Layer enable Hex users to discover, understand, and query their governed DBT assets. There's two main features here. The first is model metadata, where users can access descriptions, freshness, tests, and more, things that are defined in their DBT project. That means they can understand the data that they're looking at in Hex and make sure that it's up to date. There's also the capability of metric queries. And so that's using the semantic layer to generate a data set at a given time grain and dimensions for a certain metric. So let's take our example from before, looking at revenue broken down on a monthly basis. You can apply filters, you can break it down by, let's say, location, one of the dimensions, and dynamically generate that data set via the semantic layer, trusting that it reflects your source of truth. Ultimately, we want to make it easy for customers like Inventa to manage complexity across data, tools, and teams, and drive efficient, trustworthy decision making. So this slide shows how the DBT lineage graph with data sources, models, and metrics defined in the DBT project are then reflected in Hex, both for the model metadata and the data catalog on the left, and as a metrics query on the right. Now Ariel will walk us through Hex's integrations with DBT Cloud.
Awesome. Thanks, Cameron. As Cameron mentioned, we're actually getting really good at bringing data together. Over the past 10 years, there have been a number of different technologies that have made this possible, from things like data warehouses to modern ETL tools, all the way to governance tools. And it's actually working really well. It's easy to set up data pipelines. Cloud data warehouses offer us infinite scale and powerful compute, and DBT makes it really easy to turn that data into usable data assets. We even have observability and governance tools to help organize those assets. This is really what the modern data stack is all about, bringing data together. The issue we face today is that the fragmentation of that data is what's destroying its value. Let's walk through a situation. We'll assume it's the end of quarter and the bookings were lower than forecast this year. Our CEO wants to know why, and the request comes into the data team. So the first thing the data team does is think about the last person who solved this problem, Joe. But Joe ran everything in local files and he left the company, so we can't find his work. Then we start to scramble. We end up writing some queries in SQL to pull data into one UI, but then we actually want to manipulate it in a Python notebook for analysis. So we export that data to a CSV and then we load it. This is one, really awful for scale, but also for security and sharing. On top of all of this, none of these tools were built for collaboration. So working together is a pain. We need to send files around, we have to worry about environment compatibility, and create a bunch of different security risks as we download data locally and share our database credentials. Once we actually figure out what the insights are, communicating them is a huge pain. We can screenshot them into charts and put them into slides. We can export them into Excel. But basically, if our CEO has any other questions to ask, there's no dynamic way for that person to answer the questions. We'll have to go back and rerun all of our analysis. This whole process is really painful, inefficient, costly, and it's holding teams back from the kind of impact they should be having. Hex changes all of this. We built a unified workspace for data science and analytics. It's one application that brings everything together. It brings together workflows, eliminating fragmented tooling and mess that data teams experience today. It brings together the teams with modern collaboration and organization tools so they can operate efficiently. It brings together organizations, since Hex projects are shareable, discoverable, and impactful, so tightening those feedback loops with stakeholders and helping power decisions. You'll actually see this in action when Gabriel walks through the Inventa solution. Hex also has a really strong integration with DBT, which is what powers a lot of the Inventa solution. We have two different types of integrations, with the metadata integration and the semantic layer integration. The metadata integration in Hex will fetch information from your scheduled jobs in DBT Cloud, and it will pull details such as model, source, and column descriptions. It'll look at tests, it'll have freshness details, and it'll also have the ability to browse DBT docs directly. Hex's integration with the semantic layer also unlocks the ability to use our metric cell and write DBT flavored SQL. The metric cell lets users access trusted and governed metrics without writing any code. You can simply specify metrics, dimensions, and time grains and get back a data frame that you can use to analyze, visualize, or share. DBT SQL allows users to use DBT macros, including refs and source macros, directly within their queries in Hex. Lastly, Hex is built for organizational impact by making it easy to share and discover insights. Before Hex, data work was typically shared as static output, like slides or screenshots, and these things get lost in messages or even on your desktop. Hex moves beyond this, letting you publish your work as an interactive data app that you can share and anyone can use. These apps can be simple, like a report with just charts and a narrative, or it can be complex, like a UI backed by real-time ML model. We'll actually see how the Inventa team built a Hex app and how they then shared it with their suppliers. So there's no more exported spreadsheets or PDFs or digging to find the insight from last year. It's all right there in Hex. And with that, I will hand it over to Gabriel.
So first thing first, we started the problem with the issue that Daniel mentioned. We had some business teams that were generating those PDF files using Python scripts, extracting CSV from Hex dashboards and then re-uploading it to Google Drive. Some business analysts that are allocated to those business units and are not part of the data team were sometimes taking almost one entire day of their work week only to generate those weekly reports that we have here on the right. Also, during some custom interviews, we learned that the suppliers, they had very low visibility and understanding on how well their business was performing at Inventa, and mainly what could they do to sell more. And that's from where this reputation program started, because it's not only a way to support and give more visibility to those suppliers that are actually doing a good job at Inventa, but also some way to give the suppliers that are struggling or want to have better results directions on how they can improve their products on the platform, how they can get more sales, and how they can actually sell more. Also, the suppliers, despite having a financial back office, they can see exactly what type of customers are buying from them. If it's first purchase, if it's a repurchase, they can only guess it from the take rates that we are taking, and we are not providing them with analytics. And if we think about a PDF file that they were receiving, they have some aggregated numbers about their store, but it's really hard to keep some tracking and actually to see trends and see where they could improve their sales performance. We started to implement a Hex version of the old PDF shared by the team because we wanted to make a proof of concept, right? That we could use Hex instead of generating the PDF, and we can also have the same kind of results with the suppliers. The goal here, the initial goal, was 100% to give this day back to the business analysts that were running this report locally. And after we realized that we could actually do more with this type of product. The first issue that we found when we were trying to build this report was we have more than 1,000 suppliers. They are already opening a PDF file and they are not happy with it. How can we create a workflow that will not make them create an account, manage a password, maybe share access through their business? So we tried to solve this initial problem to actually have a correct workflow, and we managed this using some input parameters on Hex to generate some pre-filled links where the suppliers are only going to have their own data shared in this dashboard. Like in the bottom right corner, I put there like an identifier. We created some hashed IDs that are shared only the supplier backoffice, and they have a pre-filled link of Hex there that they can just directly click on the link and open a dashboard with their company data only, and they cannot see anything from the other suppliers as well. So this first problem was solved. We shared this version of the dashboard within the company and with some close suppliers that we have a more close partnership. And the initial feedback was really good. They said this is looking promising, but it still feel kind of slow. But we were not worried here because we knew that we could optimize a lot using cache on Hex side, and also to start doing 90% of the calculations on the Hex dashboard and move that to GBT. So with this feedback gathered that we need to optimize the dashboard, our team worked together with some members of the product squad. to actually define a good copy of what needs to be written in this dashboard, which kind of information they were receiving feedback that the suppliers were wanting to see. And some members of the design team also helped us define a good layout, because we had the limitations of what we could put on Hex, and they did a really good job on testing around and seeing which type of implementations the Markdown accept. So was time for our team to start actually developing the data models. So we took two ways here, right? We had those general metrics that are really meaningful to the entire company, and this kind of value we decided to define as DBT metrics, so we could access later with the semantic layer. And we also had some models that some calculations and some scores that were really only related to this reputation program, and there was no more interest in defining it as metrics, because the reputation program is still a very early stage. So this part of the project became DBT models, as you can see by the two screenshots that we put here. Now with the commercial, like we had the final version of the dashboard has two main sections. One is the commercial metrics that we can see on the left. They are basically indicators on how well the supplier business is performing at Inventa. They have their sales, which kind of customers are buying from them, if they are coming through Inventa or not, the type of purchases and the number of purchases they are receiving. All those variables, they were defined as DBT metrics. And as you can see, like it's very simple to query it, and we could easily do it like either using a no-code cell or even doing a regular SQL cell and doing some calculations after. That is what the data team ended up doing. And the nice thing about the way we build those metrics is that we define the three of them as with the same kind of dimensions, with the same kind of time grants, so we can simply integrate them in a unique data set that is going to be later filtered, and it's very easier to cache and do some scheduled runs on Hex. Also, a good point of using the DBT metrics here was because we learned that there were several ways of defining what was a supplier revenue in our company. For example, some business units would count the discounts on it. Some would take the discounts that were backed by the suppliers. And we had to actually talk to the key account manager that were talking to the suppliers, and we saw what matters to our clients, and we defined this directly in the semantic layer. So now everyone that wants to see what is the revenue don't need to know which discounts they are counting or not. They can basically take directly from DBT. Okay, go. And before I do a live demo on how the dashboard looks like, we did two things here, right? We added like a form at the end of the dashboard, so the suppliers, they could go there and give us a feedback. And we also start like to send the key account managers to get in touch with them, seeing if they're accessing, if they have problems. And the general feedback was actually very positive. And they were like, okay, this is the kind of thing that I was looking, and I actually want way more than that. They were like actually already requesting to see sales by region, type of products they are selling, clicks, so we could see that we can deliver way more. And this is just the let's say we can say the V1 of this dashboard, but it's maybe just a V0, and we proved that we could do this kind of product. And the nice thing that we could make is that we built this, and we can also have KPIs on top of it, because we don't actually know like who accessed the dashboard, the PDF file before in the email. Because normally those suppliers are using share accounts like commercial at some supplier domain, and we built this dashboard that you have the picture on the right, that is basically accessing the views of the actual report and seeing like if it's internal access, which suppliers are accessing it, which emails of those suppliers are accessing it. So we have way more to see, and we can actually start pinging the account managers to get in touch with the suppliers that are not controlling their sales over the dash. So now no more waiting. I'll just share my screen and show you how the dashboard looks like. So okay, I'm just showing here like how the report like looks like for a fake supply, the Gabriel's Pet Supplies. And basically now we have these commercial results where I can see the clients that are buying from me. This is using some fake data, so I don't have the two types of clients here, but one is like clients that are coming from Inventa, the other one by referral. And I did some work here to translate the dashboard, but the original one is actually on Portuguese. I did this one so the audience could understand more what is going on. And this section is fully implemented using the DBT metrics and the semantic layer, plus the hex dashboards as well. And we have the other part that we could implement using the DBT model that is basically calculating the reputation program score for this given supplier. And we did all that with Markdown. Like basically, and this is like defining with the product team, with the supplier team, what are the criteria, and we calculated those using the data of suppliers that are selling and having better performance on Inventa. And the thing that I mentioned here about the identifier, like if I take this down, if someone is accessing the dashboard without knowing like who is which supplier, or just stumble to the link, it's not going to share anything. So I'm not going to have any result or anything. So this is only going to show the data related to the given supplier. And what we did to share this data with the supplier is basically to copy the dashboard with the current input. Oops, this didn't work. No, yes. And we can have this link directly in our data warehouse, or maybe in the back office portal, depends on how you want to share this data with your customers. And just to show a little bit of the logics as well, as Ariel mentioned, there are several ways to query the data from the semantic layer on DBT. In this case, as we had to translate some data because our warehouse is fully in English and our suppliers are Portuguese speakers. So we are not using the no-code cell. We are actually only using the metrics package. But this is very simple. Like if you don't know how to write this, you can basically create the no-code cell and then duplicate it as a SQL cell, and you have this code snippet, and then you can just play around later if you need. And we are basically doing the entire calculation here and implementing the metrics and the markdown as well in the below. So this was a lot of work to implement the markdown, but it was a way to keep the structure and the layout better than having just a PDF file with no color and no data shown there.
Thanks all so much for joining us today to hear about how Inventa solved their supplier analytics problem in conjunction with Hex and DBT.